And welcome back to the show. Our first guest is an activist and an author who advocates for the rights and well-being of women and girls who have been impacted by intersectional trauma, as well as violent and sexual abuse, assault, domestic violence, police brutality, as well as incarceration. She's an outspoken woman who's a proponent of the need to incorporate harm reduction into our policies for addressing societal and justice issues within a human framework. We're pleased to have with us right now the author, the activist, and founder of A Little Piece of Light, Donna Hylton. And Donna, good to have you here on the Social Justice Forums.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, well, it's good to have you, and it's good to talk about this topic because one of the things I think that sometimes doesn't get enough attention is when we talk about mass incarceration. There is the incarceration of women and girls. And from your work and your research, talk to us about what are we learning when it comes to incarceration of women and girls?
Well, one of the things that people should really understand and try to grasp, right, and get an understanding of why in the past 30 years have the rate of incarceration for women increased at a rate of 830%. I think it's even more now. And so what that looks like, let me frame that out for people. Like in the year 1975, 1978, there were 2,000 women, a little over 2,000 women in prison. Now we're close to 300,000 women that are incarcerated in this country, right? Detained, incarcerated, in prisons. And so something's wrong. We have to understand what's going on, what's been going on, what's happening. And the vast majority, let's be very clear, unfortunately, vast majority are Black women, Black and brown women, specifically Black women. We far outweigh everyone else. And so, there's something telling about that. And we need to understand why that's happened, why it continues to happen, and how we can stop that from happening.
And when we talk about stop it from happening, you've been very active, particularly with legislation. We spoke in support of legislation, particularly the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act, the New York State Less is More bill. So give us more about that bill and what you feel it will contribute to society.
Well, as far as the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act, we'll say DVSJA, it's a long thing.
Right.
That I was a part of when I was incarcerated at Beverly Hills Correctional Facility. And I became a part of that fight inside because what I realized outside of my own issues, my own journey that led me to incarceration, was that the vast majority of women, young women that were inside, had been subjected to some form of abuse in their life. And no one did anything. But the response, it just dawned on me one day, is like the response is incarceration. Like we have hundreds of women here that have very similar stories, journeys, talking about abuse from childhood on, and no one did anything. No one did anything, or they were afraid to tell because they felt like they didn't have a voice, that no one would listen, no one would believe them. And we know that's true especially for Black girls. No one believes you. You know what I mean? No one believes children as it is, but in particular, Black girls. And so the criminalization of girlhood, Black girlhood, what does that look like? And that's what that was looking like. It was like, oh my God. And I was included in that. I was trafficked here and abused. I went to school to tell, and the school counselor, I was 12 years old. And my response to the abuse, the harm that was happening, I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop it, right? By my father figure, right? Was to get a lock on my door. A key would keep away the monster, would stop the hurt. Children, we put too much on children. We expect children to respond in adult ways. We expect children to understand and to figure things out and to do adult things. And we're just children. And so when you don't address it, when you don't help children, it continues, the cycle continues and continues. It's like you're walking into that dark tunnel. You keep doing it because it's familiar and it become comfortable, even though as abnormal as it is, right? And so what the response has been is to just lock people up, lock women up. And that's wrong. So that's why the DVSJA felt important for me to be a part of that, helping to contribute to the authoring of it and fighting for it. It took us over 10 years to get it passed. When I came out finally, in 2019, we were, blessed with getting it passed. And so, yeah, it's It's slowly coming along, even when bills get passed, it's still like, okay, okay, because God forbid that, the right thing is to open a floodgate where people get out because you give them some form of justice. You created an avenue for them to be heard and to get justice that they've never received before. Right? It's more about, oh no, we got to keep them in, even though we might know that they're innocent or they really didn't do all of what's been said. It's like, no, we got to keep them confined. And so, those are things that we argue about and say, like, that's not the response. That's not the answer. Less is more. Our other bill that my organization, we helped write that. We're one of three organizations that wrote the bill and lead the campaign. And
Mhm.
so that is, that's stopping people that are on parole from being reincarcerated for not committing a crime.
Yeah. So you've been able to translate your life story and really be able to put it into book form. And I want to talk about that for a moment, but I don't want to miss what you said earlier because for many people who may not be familiar with your story. You were a person that was a victim of actually being human trafficked. You dealt with trauma, you dealt with abuse, and this played out in your life. And as a result, incarceration also plays a part of your life. But now your story is I want people to know, and I want people to know more. So, talk to us about the book and what you're hoping that people will take away from it.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Professor Jaime. One of the things I like to say too, when I have these conversations and people hear me talk about what happened to me as a child, you know, people immediately, not everyone, but a lot of people immediately attack me and say, "Well, what about there was a victim in the crime?" And and I know that, So I want to
Mhm.
be clear here. Like I know that I myself, I'm a chaplain, I'm a reverend at this point, and even when I wasn't, I got that. I understand that, right? That's why I'm doing the work because we don't understand how the layers of abuse and the ways in which it can happen, right? And if it's not close to you, and if it's not you, it's not people around you, because we don't look like you or we don't have the same resources or opportunities like you, it doesn't concern you, right? And so people like to point fingers. So yes, I was born on the island of Jamaica. I was trafficked here as a little girl. I was 7.5. I was brought here by a couple who, I left my mother and my family, and I know them. I knew them. And I was told I was going to Disneyland, and I never went back. Never went back. When I started happening at 9.5, I started being taken into a closet and raped and abused daily as a child, and no one would help. No one. Well, again, at 12, I went to school to hey, counselor, I need help. I just want a key to my door. Could you help me tell my mother, my now mother, right? I'm still waiting to go back home to the world that I knew, right? And I was hoping to get back to, but I had no say in anything. And so, the cycle of abuse continued, kept going. And, one thing I like to, let people know that and understand is that predators know prey. Predators know prey. And so people prey on you when you're vulnerable, when you're naive, and when they feel like you have no support, when there are not people around you that can give you that support, adults that can give you that support. And so those are the things I speak on because no, I should never have been caught up into a situation that took a person's life. You know, that should never have happened, and I don't want that to happen. I don't. People can that it can be prevented, and people can see ahead of time like, oh, this might be, and make decisions for themselves. It's like, and that's another thing too. We talk about decisions or choices, and people will say, well, you had a choice. You don't know what a person's choice is because you don't know what's around them. You don't know what's provided for them to them. And so oftentimes the choices that a lot of people have are not the choices in a healthier environment anyone would have. And so we have to call that out as well. How we treat people, how we keep people in abject poverty. We still have children going to bed hungry, and then we get angry when they're out there stealing to eat. It's not right. But we have to look at the root causes of why they're doing it. We have to look at mental health and understand it's a disease. You can't incarcerate it to get rid of it. You have to treat it. You can't incarcerate addiction, substance abuse, because it's a disease. You have to treat it. Incarceration has been the response to every single thing that society continues to contribute to create, to make sure it keeps happening. Instead of looking at the root causes and looking, why is an individual doing that? Why is that child acting erratically? What's going on over here? We don't pay attention to each other. We don't humanize each other. We don't see children as children. We don't see black children as black as children, right? And so we miss the mark, and we're in a rabbit hole that we need to get out of. There's too much darkness. And so, yes, a little piece of light. We need more in this world.
So, having this experience of incarceration, being in and now out, you made it your mission, your life's mission, to really make sure that people don't find themselves in the same way that you found yourself. You formed a 501c3, and you got your organization out there now at the forefront. Talk to us about the work that you're doing and you're entrenched in now to try to really get people more aware, and at the same time correct some abject policies that we still have out there that are really affecting so many people in a bad kind of way.
Yeah. So those two policies that we were just talking about, DVSJA and less is more, are some of them that we're doing to change the system, right? Because we have systemic abuse that continues to happen, against people, people that are poor and people that are black and brown specifically, right? And so we're part of those campaigns. We're also part of. We help create a coalition. It's called Cover. It stands for Coalition of Voter Education Registration. So we're out there, and we will be out there again, getting people registered to vote, especially people that have been formerly incarcerated. That a lot of us were told that we could not vote. It was that unspoken thing, like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't. But come to find out, you could, right? But we were misinformed, if we were ever informed at all. It was just this myth that kept going on, that perpetrated, that, oh, you can't vote, you can't do this. So, but yeah, you can. And so we're educating people and getting our people to understand your voice is important. If your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't fight so hard for you not to do it, for you to cast a ballot. And so we're trying to re-educate our people to get them to understand that's important. So those things are some of the things that we do. And also we're able right now to provide some housing for women who continue to be the least served in the communities. We're so under-resourced where it comes to housing, employment, and other things. And, those are the things that we fight for.
Well, Donna, I know one of the things that you do is you want to make your voice heard, and you want to make sure that women are represented. Talk to us about what you found to be the biggest challenge that's really affecting women when it comes to the area of incarceration, and what we need to know, who may, from the outside in, we don't have that perspective, but people on the outside sometimes just don't know. But as a person who's been in, now out, what is it that you want people to know?
Well, first of all, I want people to know that we're anyone that's incarcerated, right? And not just specific to women, but of course, that's the side I'm on. Are just human beings. We're just like you. We're no different. We might have made a mistake or two or three or four. We might have made some horrible mistakes. But if we understand, if we truly believe in forgiveness, right? What will that look like? It's seeing the person who might have caused harm or caught up into something, and seeing their humanity, and seeing that, recognizing that, valuing that, and touching that, right? And trying to connect with that, so that person can also recognize their humanity and see yours. And so we can all just like start doing this thing called life in the way in which we were created to do it, right? With love, with understanding, right? We cannot, we oftentimes, looking at people, and we want to find something to judge. We want to find something to blame. We want to find, because there's a lot going on inside. And so everyone carries something. All of us are a book. We all are a story. And so we all carrying something. We all have something to tell. But we don't know what that is until we open ourselves up to be say, hey, I always tell people when I'm out there talking, and I was like, here, take my hand. Will you take my hand? Will you take my hand? I offer it to you. And remember, I'm the person that's sitting next to you on the subway. I'm the person at the restaurant eating at the next table. I'm in the movie theater with you. I'm walking down the street. I might be walking my dog, whatever, like you do. We just want to be normal, respected, accepted human beings. Vast majority of people that have even committed a crime, just been through incarceration, really just want an opportunity. You'd be surprised how many people didn't even have a first chance. We keep talking about second chances, but they never even had a first chance. No, it doesn't excuse behavior. It doesn't excuse behavior that harms people or causes harm. It doesn't. But we have to understand why. We just really have to look deep and see the person and try to understand what happened.
Talk to me about how you view life now. I mean, since your release, you've been doing some great work. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was the fact you were a featured speaker at the Women's March in 2017 in Washington, D.C. And you've been a sought after voice to be able to speak to these issues. What's it like for you now being able to give back and have your voice be asked for and heard at a time like this?
Well, thanks for recognizing that. Um, one of the things that I'm always looking to, and I don't like to say this phrase anymore, but when I came out, I was saying it because I was that person. I spent 27 years inside. So, I was like, why are we so voiceless? How come no one would listen to us? So I had vowed that I was going to change that. I was going to do something to change that narrative. Like, no, you must hear us. We're here, right? You cannot just silence us, marginalize us, and disappear us. We're no longer going to be disappeared. And so, like, I made a vow. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but it happened organically with the help of Sister Mary Nern. He used to come inside Bethford. She became my mother figure.
Mhm.
And so I was blessed enough to, have that opportunity through speaking and stuff. And it just grassroots kind of grew and developed. And I guess, people started hearing. We say we listen, but do we truly hear? And I think people started really hearing. Like, wow, this happens. This can happen. Yeah, it can happen. And people started understanding that, and so it created more opportunities for me. And and one of the things I've decided, I stand in my truth. A narrative and narratives have been created about me and for me that were not mine and not my truth. And so I'm standing in my truth, and I want to show you can stand in your truth. Take your power back. Those that have caused you harm, that have abused you, they don't have that power. Don't give them that. Don't continue to give them that. Take it back. Own your truth. No matter what it is, whether someone believes you or not, you believe you. You believe you. And that's what is important.
Yeah. Well, Donna, I want to let you know it's been a pleasure having you here with us, and the work that you're doing. Continue to do it, making a difference, making an impact. Share your story because, as you share your story, I think more and more people are becoming more inspired and then ultimately transformed, just like your life as well. So thank you so much for being with us
Thank,
here on the Social Justice Forums.
thank you for having me. Have a great
All
night.
righty, Donna Hylton, our guest here. And want to let you know we want you to stay with us because guess what? We're going to take a quick break. We've got more on the Social Justice Forums. We'll return right after this.